part of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 317, The Rise of Skywalker Novelization. So this one took a little bit longer to get out. There were a couple things that got in the way. One, we had to wait for the novel to come out, and two, we needed time to read the novel. And then this whole coronavirus thing just got in the way with me personally. I've been doing a lot of work for it. I'm fine. I'm healthy. There's no concern there. But just the nature of my personal business and what I do for a living just kind of got in the way. So nonetheless, we're here tonight and we're going to break down the novel. And to help me do so, I'd like to please welcome back to the show the Tiger Queen, Michaela. Michaela's back. How are you, Michaela?
Yeah, wow. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again.
You're welcome. So before we came on the air, I didn't know what all this hubbub was about this Tiger King. In fact, I didn't really understand what it was. And so I had to ask her what it was. And this sounds like it's so like escapism and so trashy that I just want to jump into this thing now. So if you haven't heard, Michaela, what is this about? What is this? I know this is not Star Wars related, but we need a good laugh in these trying times. But what is this thing about?
It is wild. It's about a gay polygamous tiger zoo owner person who just happens to rule his own world, and things get really crazy really fast. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So most of those traits, that's kind of Mike Rondo for most of those traits. So I don't know. I'm just kidding. No, but anyways, it sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm going to have to go check it out. It's like all over my feed and I can't escape it. So it must be a sign.
It's wild.
Anyways, but we're here. But let's get into the real news. We've got two things I want to talk about. They're both The Mandalorian related. So if you have not heard, I don't know if you've been living under a rock or whatever, but there is a lot of rumor going around right now about Rosario Dawson appearing in season 2 of The Mandalorian as Ahsoka Tano. Now, again, it is a rumor, and I know we don't really do a whole lot of rumors here on the show, but this one felt concrete enough to talk about because they have confirmed that Ahsoka would be back, or she is coming in season 2. So it's really just a question of who's going to play her. I think on what you've got people in one camp that are all in on Rosario Dawson. And Rosario Dawson, she's been like rumored since, I don't even know, 2015, 2014. It's been forever that she's been rumored that she would play a live action Ahsoka Tano. She's on record as saying, yeah, I'd like to do it. People have photoshopped her as to look like her. I saw somebody do a Photoshop of her and Anakin, her and, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they photoshopped her to look like Ahsoka, and they photoshopped him to look like Anakin. And they put them hugging together and all. I mean, this is, again, it's been like year after year. And then you've got people in one camp that feel like Ashley Eckstein should still play her. And then you've got another group of people that feel like, hey, neither one of those is a good choice. And it really should be, I don't know, insert actress here. So just your thoughts first off on Ahsoka coming in to The Mandalorian in season 2. And, who would you pick if you had your choice to play, or have her played by anybody that you wanted? Who would that be?
Oh my goodness. That's so hard for me, only because, really, she's such a great character. I mean, I watched her when I was younger, right? With the Clone Wars and she was so personal, right? I could connect with her. But really, I think Rosario Dawson wouldn't be bad. I know people are like, well, she doesn't sound like Ahsoka, like, Ashley, why not Ashley? It's like, Ashley hasn't really been in live action films, really, since the early 2000s. It's been a long time. I mean, her voice acting is incredible, but I mean, I haven't seen her act, and seeing her live on screen, I think would be a little different. I do.
Yeah, and she's dressed up as her, didn't she? Do a cosplay as her once?
She does, yeah, which is kind of fun. But I mean, I think I just have to trust the directors here, and I'm just excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I would agree, and I don't think I have a strong preference one way or the other. I know I say this and I beat this dead horse constantly on the show, but I'm just in favor of a good show.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of a good, performance, whether it's Ashley or Rosario, whoever it is. I don't even care. But I am excited that she is going to be back, or she'll be coming into season 2. And I think that would help explain a lot of things. I mean, there's obviously going to be a natural connection between, a Force user who we know that the Mandalorian is looking for to kind of hand over the baby and say, hey, this belongs to you. This may be your property since he's Force sensitive, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a natural link and connection there. But my head immediately goes to like, so where does it go from there? Right? What happens with Ahsoka, and where does Ezra fit in all this?
Oh man, yeah, it's going to be fun to see how they take it.
I mean, it certainly opens up a lot of different doorways here for them to or different paths, I should say, that they can take at that point. This almost kind of overshadows the story of the Mandalorian. So I'm worried that if they're going to slow drip this throughout the whole season, or if this is going to be something this is how it ends, and it's like a clean handoff, and we don't have to wonder or how this is going to impact the Mandalorian, going into season 3. That would be my preference, because otherwise this baby Yoda, like I said, it just keeps lingering, right? It's there. It's such a presence. And at some point, I think he does have to disconnect from that to really kind of develop him as a character as far as who he is. Because right now that baby defines him in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
And so hopefully that natural connection between Ahsoka and the baby Yoda will allow that to kind of help him and maybe break him free of all that. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. Again, nothing confirmed, but fun to talk about. Certainly fun to speculate about. And if you want to get into Flame Wars, go hit Twitter and voice your opinion on who you think it should be, because there are no shortage of people that want to start a fight right now. So, okay. The other part of news was Michael Biehn is a veteran actor. No pun intended, because he usually gets stereotyped into these like militant roles in most of the movies that he plays. But Michael Biehn has been cast officially in season 2 of The Mandalorian. There are rumors that are out there about who he is. I know there's some stuff about what he looks like, this and that. But again, none of that's confirmed, so we're not going to talk about it. But any thoughts about, before I ask you, so for those of you who don't know, Michael Biehn, he's been in The Terminator, is probably the role that he's most known for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was also in Tombstone, or not Tombstone. Was it Tombstone? I forget now. Darn it.
I think it was.
Yeah, but he was also in The Abyss. So he's kind of a James Cameron guy. He tends to do a lot of movies with James Cameron, but he's been in so many movies, and he's one of those. Aliens is another one. I mean, Hicks in Aliens. He's probably known to me at least more as Hicks. But anyways, he's one of those actors, when you see him, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that guy before. But on the surface, you probably don't say his name too much. So what do you think about him being cast, and any thoughts about what his character could be or who he would be even playing?
Oh man. So we were talking about earlier how he's kind of gruffy looking, right? He looks like he could be a bounty hunter. And it makes me think of Valance, right? Because of Terminator. He's got that half cyborg face. His limbs are all metal. And he was a bounty hunter, right?
Yeah,
and he went from legends to canon. And he still lives, so why not? Bring him in.
Yeah.
Be cool to see.
It would be. Bounty hunter seems like a natural fit, and whether that's a new character or an existing one, I don't think you're going to go wrong either way with somebody like him. So
yeah,
it's really, this whole season 2 is starting to shape up to be pretty chock full of highlighted actors and characters and stuff like that. So I don't know. I just want it to be more than 8 episodes. I think it needs to be longer at this point.
Yeah.
So all that's pretty exciting. I don't know. But if I had my money, or I had my put money down, I would say he's coming in as a bounty hunter of sorts. Good, bad, indifferent, I don't know yet, but you'd be remiss not to put him into a role like that. So very cool. All right. Well, those are that's all we have this week for news. And that's, there were other things too, but honestly, it was kind of slow. There's a lot going on right now in the world. So we'll take what we can get. Okay, let's get into our main show and talk about The Rise of Skywalker novelization. So what I thought we'd do is start off by talking about, just give you some general thoughts. Now, first off, for those of you who have never heard how we kind of break down novelizations, we do not get into every aspect of the novel. This is not going to be a 3-hour show. It's not going to be a 2-hour show. We'll probably get out of here in about 50 minutes. So the reason why is because we try to just kind of generally talk more or less of how the novel went, how we felt like writing styles were, that kind of thing. And then we'll get into some of the maybe more memorable moments for us for different reasons. So I kind of broke those into 2 categories. I want to talk about the expanded scenes. So scenes that we saw in the movie where in the novel we got some additional context or some additional lines, or just, they were expanded, right? There was more there for those different scenes that we felt like really had an impact on the scenes. And then I do want to talk about some of the scenes that were added in to the novelization. And so these could be scenes that were scrapped and filmed, but scrapped from the final version of the movie that we saw, or they could just be scenes that were never part of it, or that maybe have just were implied. And Ray Carson took some liberty here to kind of give us that story and give us more of what we didn't get to hear or see. So that's kind of how we did it. So that's how it's going to work. Again, we're not going to break down everything. Later on, maybe in the next show, I may pick this up. I think there's enough in this novelization, and this is a great lead-in. But just from overall general thoughts, there's enough in this novelization that I really felt like as I was reading it, it was like, wow, this could be a little show. This could be a 30 or 40-minute show just talking about these 5 paragraphs. Mm-hmm. Because we didn't get that. We didn't probably hear that or see it or get confirmation of it in the movie. And so I was thinking that maybe next week or a couple weeks from now, we'll get to see how the schedule plays out. It may be worth diving into some more of the novelization. But I would say overall, for me, my overall thoughts on this novel, for those of you that know, I wasn't the biggest fan of The Rise of Skywalker. And I have to say I really, really enjoyed the book and definitely enjoyed the book. And then this is going to sound maybe it's not blasphemous, but I enjoyed the book a lot more than the movie. I would agree in general, books are always better than movies, right? But with a situation like this, where the movie is already out and it's a Star Wars movie, especially, sometimes it's not uncommon for the movie to be better than the book because of the visualizations and because of the special effects and all that stuff, right? Sometimes they're able to portray that better than I can in my head. And this one felt like I really enjoyed the book more than the movie, but it wasn't because of that stuff. It was because of all the other stuff that we got. I felt like the novelization, it didn't give you too much information that you felt like it was sacrificing the pacing, because that's one thing The Rise of Skywalker had just in spades, right? Was the pace. I mean, it was like, hit the pedal and it was just go, 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 mm-hmm. go, especially that first 45 minutes of the movie, first half of the movie, right? There's just so much you're taking in that you don't get a chance to breathe. And then with the novelization, you do, right? You can expand and really let those scenes play out a little bit longer, let them linger a little bit more, let those moments sink into your head a little bit faster or a little bit longer. And that's what I really enjoyed. And I think that's kind of, I don't know that I would be saying that had the pacing not been as such with the final movie that we got. So
yeah. I don't disagree.
The one last thing, and I want to turn it over to you because I do want to get your thoughts on just kind of your general thoughts. But I think I may have already mentioned this, but there are a lot of moments. There are so many moments in this book where I felt like Carson, she inserted things that were already in the novel, or already in the movie. She ad-libbed something, or not ad-lib, but she added some additional dialogue that we didn't get to hear or see. Maybe there's a little, a cut that was put in that didn't necessarily have to be there, didn't have any impact on the overall movie, but I just thought it was really, really great the way she was able to kind of do that and kind of healed some of the issues that I had with The Rise of Skywalker in answering some very small, minute, trivial things that for us stood out. And I'm going to get into some of those a little bit later. But anyway, so that's kind of my general overall thoughts. But what were your, how did you feel reading the book? What did you think about it overall?
So reading the book, when I first got it, I was kind of worried how small it was. It was only 250 some pages, right? I'm like, that movie was so long. There was so much going on. Like, how is Ray Carson going to get this whole story and then some, right? This is the expanded edition. How is she doing this? And upon reading it, I was amazed. I was like you were saying, the things that are in it. I took notes throughout the entire time I was reading it, and my note page on my phone just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls and scrolls of just additional information. And like you said, it's not even like huge chunks or an entire chapter that's shoved in there. And It's just the little things, and it really makes a difference, I think.
Yeah, no, it's the little things, right? But it's because we read novels a lot, especially like for like Star Wars novelizations. You read them, and sometimes there's stuff in there, but it's just like, yeah, okay, yeah, so what, right?
Yeah,
filler. But in this one, even like this, what's that?
I like filler information.
Yeah, it's like filler information. But in this one, a lot of it wasn't necessarily. I mean, there was filler. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there wasn't, but there were a lot of good stuff in there that was not filler. Like it was like substantial. Like it actually had impact. There was weight to it. There was meaning to it, and it puts things in a different light. More so than I would say. I would argue like with Jason Fry and the Last Jedi. I think Johnson did just a masterful job in the story that he had to tell. That I don't think that's one where I feel like the movie was way better than the book. And that's not a dock on Jason Fry. It's just I just felt like it was a near perfect movie in terms of the way it was crafted, right? So it was very. I mean, how do you follow that up with a novel? And I feel it was like the inverse here, right? She was able to take something like that, give us all the stuff that we wanted and knew that we needed to see or hear, and she did that via dialogue, and that's probably why the novel's so short. There's a lot of dialogue, so the pacing. I mean, it's a fast read. I think I got through this book and this is me working a day and a half, maybe. Yeah. Right. I mean, it was quick. I blew right through it faster than I normally do. Because she is where the dialogue it works, she kept it. Right where it didn't work, she expanded on it. Or if there was more in there that we knew we needed, or she felt like we needed, she expanded upon that. And so that's where I kind of felt like it did keep the pace going, and it was a shorter novel because she didn't really touch a lot of the dialogue or really try to expand on some of that stuff, and really spent the time going into some other more interesting aspects of it. So I got a question, and it's a loaded question. So I'm going to ask you because I'm the host and I'm chicken. Does a novel fix anything for anybody? Like, you hear that all the time. Well, does it fit? And I think there were some crazy expectations for this one too, right? That the novel was somehow going to wash away all of the problems that we had with the Rise of Skywalker from a narrative perspective. But do you feel it fixed anything for anybody?
I think so. I'm going to say this because I personally, coming out of the Rise of Skywalker, I felt a little empty from the end. Like, it was great, everyone came together, but again with Ben's death, like that's what was kind of the killer for me, really. And I really feel like what they added into this book, it really, I think, closed a lot of doors for me, which was great. Yeah.
I say it's a loaded question because I think it's all about perspective, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, to be honest. Because it depends on it depends on how you went in with that movie and how you came out with that movie.
Yeah, I think so.
That really has a huge impact on whether or not anything's going to. I mean, if you were expecting this novel to fix large systemic issues with the movie or the sequel trilogy, no. It doesn't fix anything for you, right? Yeah. I mean, those are they're there. You have to accept them and move on. Do they fix things where, like you say, you left, there was a bit of a hole there and there was probably some emptiness that needed to be filled? Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely some things here. Now, is it still what we wanted, right? Is it still like the headcanon or the grandioso imagery that we expected to see at the very end, and how we portrayed or how we, thought all of this was going to play out, or how we thought it should play out, or, all that? No, it doesn't do that either. But it at least fills in the holes, I think, more than anything. Yeah. It gives you that closure, kind of like you said, right? That door closes. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, I feel at least content knowing this is exactly how it happened and why it happened. Exactly. Even if I don't agree with it, at least I feel like I'm there, right? I've gotten at least that far. And we can talk about Ben Solo. I don't have it in the show notes, but we probably should just touch on that. I think we'll naturally do that through the course of this. But that for me is another one too. That was the biggest thing for me is that the ending with Ben and how they just kind of left him, right? I do think we get a little bit more here, and it's again for you, like for me too. It's enough for now. But let's talk about Ray Carson's writing style, because I know. So if there was any doubt whether or not Ray Carson could carry a full length novel, I think she kind of put those doubts to rest with Most Wanted, although I know that book didn't get a lot of traction, partly because it was tied to Solo, right? The Rise of Skywalker. There wasn't a huge, everybody wasn't dying, pining to get their hands on Most Wanted. But I thought it was a fun novel. I mean, we read it. We didn't cover it on the show. We chose not to at the end of the day. But I think Jonesy and I both read it, and we both enjoyed the novel. It just wasn't, over the top. It wasn't probably anything there was probably other stuff going on. So, but definitely, I think with this novel, I think even as that was a young adult novel, I think that she absolutely did an amazing job here. And especially with the scenes that she didn't have footage to work with, right? There were scenes that, again, there were no footage. Maybe there was a script. I don't know. I haven't been able to confirm one way or the other. Maybe they gave her something to work with, but I felt like, again, the pacing was really good, and her style of writing is very to the point and a very, very quick read. So, I really think this is an opportunity for her to kind of open up and do something new. I'd like to see what she could do without, having to work with someone else's material, like whether or not she's going to get her own stories and that kind of thing. So, but anyways, what did you think about her writing style here?
It just flowed so nicely. It was such a great read. Just going from the subject matter of like the actual film to what she put in. I think she did a great job. And like, really, what more can I say than that?
Yeah. Now, I would say if you're, well, we'll get into this later. I want to talk about like, okay, so who's the novel for, right? Who is this for you? Is it not for you? We can get into that here in a little bit. So, okay, well, let's talk about first some of the expanded scenes. Again, we're not doing everything, but I want to talk about the first thing I want to just kind of bring up is this whole Snoke is a clone scene. So this is after this is right in chapter 2. And so chapter 2 is right when Kylo Ren has already landed his ship. He is looking to he's on Exegol, and he's making his way towards the Emperor. He's already gone down like the elevator or the floating platform or whatever it is to the bottom. And he hears that voice that says, "Snoke trained you." The voice said, Kylo knew that voice. He heard it his whole life. As a young man, it had been like the wisp of a dream, one he couldn't quite grasp. Then the Emperor's transmission had flooded the galaxy. And so right there, I mean, they make reference to the transmission that was in Fortnite, which I thought was good because, again, I mean, outside of the dead speak in the opening crawl, we don't have anything there. And I think they make at least 2 references to that speech in the novel that I caught. There may be even more. I wasn't really paying attention to that probably or as focused anymore. But they make at least 2 references that I'm aware of to that. So it's kind of nice that they at least call back to it, But it says, so the Emperor's transmission had flooded the galaxy, and Kylo had began to dread that Palpatine had somehow survived, that he had been this whispering voice that had comforted, guided, tormented him for so many years. So this is just confirmation here that Kylo Ren has heard Palpatine's voice for years and years. I mean, way back even to when he was even a young man. And we saw this in the novel, in the comic books. Did you get a chance to read The Rise of Kylo Ren?
No, I didn't.
Okay. We just did a show. We did a show with Maggie on it, and we went through the whole thing. But there are certainly moments in there where this all kind of comes to play. In fact, there's a great flashback scene where they're on their way to an ancient Jedi temple that existed in the High Republic. And there's voices that are talking to Kylo Ren, and it's Snoke's voice. But, we argued then on the show, or not argued, but we brought up that on the show that it never clearly states who's speaking to Kylo or Ben Solo at this age. And he's probably about 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. But this is, again, a good callback to the fact that he's been hearing these voices all along. And when he heard Emperor Palpatine's voice in the Fortnite message, which we never heard, obviously, in the movie, he knew exactly who that voice was. And this is all out for him. He's on this mission now to confront that, because I think in the novel it says he's not going to allow somebody just to give up. He's the supreme leader of the First Order. Now there's somebody that's claiming to be like the big cheese. He's not going to allow this. In fact, he's not, more than anything, he's probably going out there to ensure that it's not a hoax, right? That it's legit, and someone's not trying to play games or whatever. He's trying to squash that immediately. Or if it is truly turns out to be Palpatine, he's on a mission to kill him. Right? This is somebody that's trying to impose on his territory now that he feels like he's rightfully owner of. But anyway, so let me get on to the Snoke part, because I know I haven't even gotten there yet. So he says, we get into the whole Snoke. He says he was nothing but your test. You did well to destroy him. Kylo asks Palpatine, who are you to speak of me? It says, the voice deepened, shaken with barely restrained power. I am the one who led you here, who has foreseen your destiny. So I want to pause here because I want to, there are moments, and more than anything, I think from this novel that I took away with regards to like Ben Solo, especially, that is the first crack, at least in the novel. That's the first crack in the dam that continues throughout the novelization. There's little things that continue to happen here that eat and chip away at Kylo Ren and expose more and more of Ben Solo. And I don't think we get that from the movie. Would you agree? You pick up, you know what I'm talking about? Like, and we're going to get into some of these here.
I mean, there's things throughout the entire book. Like every time you get a section with Kylo Ren, it's just time after time. There's little snippets in there that really start to bring out the Ben Solo in him, which is really cool to watch. Yeah.
And I think that's, and so it's easier, right? If you have a problem with like trying to rationalize how he just kind of turns it off and turns it back on from, Kylo Ren to Ben Solo, this is one of those things that I think is kind of healing, right? It's probably a fix for somebody that's maybe disconnected there and not able to kind of see it. Because again, you think about it, you've got somebody like Palpatine who tells him that I'm the one who led you here, I've foreseen your destiny. And it gets into this a little bit further on, where once he confronts the Oracle, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, there's another moment there as well where it starts to really eat away at Kylo Ren and make him feel like, hey, maybe I'm not in control here, right? Maybe I'm not the one driving here, that there is a grander scheme or a grander play that I'm a part of. And my destiny isn't to become supreme leader. My destiny isn't to stay Kylo Ren. My destiny is to go to the light, right? I mean, these are things that he's conflicted with already. But again, these little things like that just start speaking to him and start kind of chipping away at him very, very slowly. Okay, so anyways, he gets up to what we see in the movie where he's got the three tubes and they're filled with different Snokes. And it says all the vials were empty of liquid save one, which was nearly depleted. Kylo peered closer. He had seen this apparatus before when he'd studied the Clone Wars as a boy. So in this moment, he's actually now walked up to Palpatine. He's ignited his lightsaber. He's got the lightsaber up, and he's now seen like that. What was it? The Omen device, or what was the name of that thing? They actually gave it a name. That long thing that Palpatine connected to.
It was like
I think
Sith.
it's called. Omen. They said it was like a Sith King or something like that a long time ago. But they gave it a name. I think it's called the Omen device or the device of Omen or something like that. But anyways, he's looking at this, and that's when he realizes that Palpatine is a clone. That he's seen all these tubes. He's seen it all before when he was a clone, when he was a boy studying the Clone Wars. It says the liquid flowing into the living nightmare before him was fighting a losing battle to sustain the Emperor's putrid flesh. And with that line, we get confirmation for the first time that the Emperor survived in the body of a clone, which, I mean, had kind of set the whole, Star Wars universe on fire when this was leaked. I think this particular snippet was leaked weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago now. But I want to throw this question at you. What do you think? How do you feel about this? You have Kylo Ren there. He's now gotten confirmation that this is a clone. I think it kind of rocks our worlds in terms of who the Emperor was, because I think coming out of the movie, we weren't really sure. People thought, oh, maybe he could be a clone. Maybe he was reanimated in his already decaying body that was preserved somehow from the explosion of the second Death Star.
Yeah.
Maybe it was another body that he inhabited. And, I mean, there was all these different theories, but none of them were kind of solidified until we got this line here that in actuality it was really truly a clone that his life force went into. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about, how do you feel about Palpatine being a clone?
Well, I mean, it makes semi-sense, right? Coming out of the movie, I thought maybe he had, he was cut in half, right? But I mean, Darth Maul survived that, right? You can make it happen.
Sure,
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, I mean, this is him still, right? He's messed up, but I mean, that'll do that to you. Him being a clone, I think with the whole idea of clones through Star Wars, it's been a huge part of just storytelling. I don't think it is too far out of reach to say that yeah, obviously he's a clone, but I didn't really see it coming.
Yeah. And I don't, I would agree. I don't know how I feel about it, one way or the other. I mean, so for anybody that's seen, like, did you ever read the Dark Empire comics?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So they were like in the 90s. It is a long time ago. But anyways, those comics, I mean, this is right out of the Dark Empire comics. If you read those, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And as cool as that comic was, because I really liked it, there was something just kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's cool that they were leveraging that comic book and leveraging a lot of the story elements from that and how Palpatine survived. But at the same time, I don't know, I'm not going to say disappointed, but I was just hoping that it was going to be more Force stuff, right? Or more mystical stuff, more spiritual ghost, kind of thing. And this is headcanon, I know, but I was hoping it would be more of that than science, right? We're getting more cloning science here as a way to explain how Palpatine survived, rather than focusing on, which I think is truly more interesting, and that is, the mysticism of the Force and the inner workings of the Force, and especially the dark side and how, all that is. So I guess that was the only thing that bothers me more than anything. It's not so much that he's a clone. I'm fine with it. I mean, you would think somebody with cloning technology would have thought, hey, maybe I should invest this, into this myself at some point. But I guess I just really was kind of hoping that they would have at least, did something more there. But if you've never had a chance to read the Dark Empire comics, I'll plug it right now. Go find them if you can. They're definitely, it's a cool read, and you're going to see a lot of parallels here in terms and only this aspect, don't get me wrong. The Dark Empire series really goes a whole different direction in terms of where Luke and all those guys end up. But anyways, yeah. But so why do you think people were so upset though with all of this?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it comes down to
theory?
headcanon.
Did you have a theory? I'm sorry, Michaela, but did you have a theory before we got confirmation here about how he survived?
Yeah. I thought maybe, right, he had been cut in half, and kind of like what I was saying earlier, that, it was his body. He was just, that's why he looks so gross, right? Trying to survive.
Yeah. And that seems to be like the more practical one, right? Like, this is why he's decaying. But yeah. The rest of that scene is interesting itself. I mean, we got confirmation that Snoke was a clone. Obviously, that was, I guess, semi-controversial. I don't think anybody really cares at this point, given he was cut in half and doesn't exist anymore. But we get confirmation that the Emperor Palpatine was a clone, or is a clone. He's currently in a clone, and we'll talk about that later in terms of how that all happened, because it's important. But there was another line here where it says where he's talking about the galaxy, right? Emperor Palpatine's talking about how the might of the First Order will soon be ready. He says, it will be yours if you do as I ask. Kill the girl. And he says, end the Jedi and become what your grandfather Vader could not. You will rule the galaxy as the new emperor. And so this is now the third time, right? If you're keeping track, he made that offer to, he probably made the offer to Vader at some point, I would imagine, even though we never saw it in the movies or comics. But we know he made that offer to Luke, right? At least to take his side. He wanted him to kill him. He ends up doing it here. And then later on, he does the same thing to Rey. I mean, this is kind of repeating theme where he's telling these guys that you need to strike me down, you need to kill me. Your destiny is to become the emperor, and all of this is all Palpatine being Palpatine. He really is not doing this for anybody but himself. In every one of those outlets, very manipulative. In every one of those outlets, I guarantee you, the only one that was going to come out ahead was going to be him, right? But there is a cool line here too, right after that, where he says, Kylo says, "If I don't, like, what if I don't kill Rey?" He says, "Then the girl will become a Jedi. The First Order will fall, and you will die. You have already sensed this," which is crazy because all three of these things happen, just not in this order, right? He kills, so the girl will become a Jedi. Well, Rey does become a Jedi, if not when she says, "I'm all the Jedi," or presumably thereafter she becomes a Jedi, right? So that does come to fruition. He says the First Order will fail. Well, it fell, and it starts to fall. We definitely see that happening. And he says, "And you will die," in which he does die, which is, so I just thought it was interesting that he's telling them that if he doesn't do these things, these three things are going to happen, and yet they still happen. So it's all about destiny, right? All three of those were going to happen one way or the other. So
Yeah, and even like for seeing his death, right? Leia even sees that.
So yeah, lots of cool revelations in the scene, and it just kind of gets a quick pass over in the movie, and yet in the book, because they're able to slow it down, we get a lot more from that, which kind of starts to help make sense of the story, I think, especially this aspect of it. Now, was this content necessary to tell the story they were trying to tell? No, probably not. But I think it would have helped like that 1% of us who kind of needed more in this moment. So anyways, that's the first one I had. Did you have any other thoughts or comments on that scene or things that stood out to you?
No, but I wouldn't mind jumping over to Ben's death really quick.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that. What do you got?
There's just, with the expanded scenes, right? We're talking about what has happened and like things that just kind of go further than what we've seen on the film. And we talked earlier about, did this book fix anything?
Yeah.
I think for me, when it comes to the death of Ben, people had been so upset, like, oh, well, why wasn't Ray sad? Or, wow, there wasn't really anything too exciting other than, there you go, he disappears, turns into a Force ghost or whatever. I really think in this book, he speaks to her. He says, I'll always be with you. Yeah. And that's one of those things that's, Ben didn't get to say anything in the film. In the book, he says something really important. I just think that was really cool.
Yeah. No, and you're right, because one of the things that I had a hard time with is just the Ray is too stoic in that moment in the movie, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, we don't see everything that happens, right? We don't see her. Maybe she had a moment there where she broke down and became very emotional, but we just don't see it. All right. So we're led to believe that nothing happened outside of what we saw. And all we saw was her just get into a ship and be like, okay, well, let's get out of here. I know he just died, but who cares, right? Yeah. And that's not really what happened. And to your point, right? Not only does he literally tell her, I'll always be with you, but I think this book also does a good job of touching, and we're not going to talk about it in this show, and this is one of those things I want to bring up in a future show, but the dyad itself and the relationship that Ben Solo and Rey have, it does get into a little bit of it here. I don't want to get anybody too excited to go around and buy the book because there's not a whole lot of secrets here, but it does enough for me at least to explain that they're on a level of relationship that I can't even wrap my head around it. Right? It's like otherworldly. It's nothing like we're able to kind of even think about. It's just out there, right? It's almost celestial in a way. And I think that's why when we see her, she's already made peace with it. Like he's not really gone. He's not really dead to her as maybe we thought. And that's why she is how she is. That's how she reacts the way she does. And that's why she's so kind of bubbly and happy. I mean, and not to mention the fact that, what The Last Jedi did and, what the Rise of Skywalker did is take the Force to the next level. I mean, we're going into stuff that even like, as much as I know about the Old Republic, there's very few references to some of this stuff that they've done. Like these powers are very unique. And I don't know if if that's just the Force evolving, or maybe this is stuff that's just been long lost and these abilities are long lost. But I mean, there are arguments to be made that they are going to be able to still see one another more than Force ghosts. I mean, we know that there's already physical activity that can happen as a Force ghost, right? Mm-hmm. We saw that in The Last Jedi. We saw it again here. So why wouldn't that just continue on, right? The natural evolution of that is some kind of world or some kind of existence where you can be a Force ghost and still be with people that are living and still be able to interact with people that are living. I mean, it's a weird relationship. I mean, talk about a long distance relationship. Yeah. But that's kind of essentially what maybe that's the path they're going down. I mean, and then, you get in like the world between worlds and all this other stuff. I mean, who knows, right? Who knows what's out there? There's definitely a way for it to happen. Again, I don't think it's ever going to happen in my lifetime. I may not see it. I may not ever see this relationship, pan out in any way. But it's definitely not close, and it's definitely not one that's over with, which I thought was, again, it was pretty comforting, just being able to kind of know that at least he was there for her and was able to say, hey, I'll always be with you.
Yeah.
So it was good. That's definitely one where I felt like, okay, I've made peace with it. I can move on, even though it may not be how I wanted it. I know that they're still together in some way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Okay, let's talk about Rey's father is a clone. And we won't talk about this one too much, but it starts off in chapter 17 because there are some very interesting things here that happen here in this scene as well. Starts off in chapter 17, and this is right at the this is when Palpatine's kind of enticing her to kill him, and he says, "With the stroke of her saber, the Sith are reborn, the Jedi are dead." And then we get this shared moment that happens between Rey and Palpatine, where she's able to kind of see things from like past events from his perspective. All right, she almost gets inside his head, is able to kind of see these things and shares these thoughts and these feelings, almost kind of like I think it mentions because of their relationship, right? Their blood relationship. Mm-hmm. That's why they're able to kind of connect in this way. But we kind of learn, and it starts off with, we learn what happened to Palpatine when he died in Return of the Jedi. And so for those of you who still don't know, we get confirmation that he indeed did die. I know there was a lot of people talking about it, whether or not, did Anakin fulfill the prophecy, that kind of thing. He did. We get confirmation in the novel. The Emperor died. Prophecy was fulfilled. But his spirit was able to live on because he had, according to the Rise of Skywalker novelization, he was actually able to prepare for this moment where his master did not. And so Palpatine knew that Vader would eventually turn on him. And he even makes mention of the flickering light in his apprentice is what it says, mm-hmm. which is a nice callback to the conflict that Palpatine questions Vader on during Jedi, where he says, no, there is no conflict, that kind of thing. But it says, so the falling, dying emperor called on all the dark power of the Force to thrust his consciousness far, far away to a secret place he had been preparing. His body was dead, an empty vessel, long before it found the bottom of the shaft, and his mind jolted to new awareness in a new body, a painful one, a temporary one. So this is confirmation of him, again, going into the body of that clone that we talked about, but he mentions that he was trapped. Like he was literally trapped inside this broken, dying form of a body, and that's why we see him as he is, all decayed and decrepit and all of that. Mm-hmm. The novel expands upon this as well. It says, it was too soon. That the secret place had not completed its preparation. The transfer was imperfect, and the clone body wasn't enough. Perhaps Plagueis was having the last laugh after all. Maybe his secret remained secret, but because Palpatine was trapped in a broken, dying form. And this is, again, 100% right out of Dark Empire in terms of the cloning process of it all. But then we get the insight after that about Rey's father and the heretics that served Palpatine, that they had tried many times over and over to create a host that was capable of sustaining Palpatine in his spirit without any success. And that part says one genetic strand cast lived. Now, wait, sorry. The strand cast, I don't know if you caught this, but that is from The Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. So they mentioned strand cast in chapter 7, The Reckoning. That was the very first time. It's a way to kind of explain these clone bodies, I guess, or some of the cloning process or techniques or whatever. But they call them strand casts. So I thought it was kind of cool that they threw it in here. But anyway, it says one genetic strand cast lived, thrived even, a not quite identical clone, his, quote, son. But he was useless, powerless failure. Palpatine could not even bear to look upon such disappointing ordinariness. The boy's only worth would lay in continuing the bloodline through his more natural methods. And it was through that eventual union, unexpected as it was, that Rey was born, the perfect vessel, strong enough to contain all the power of the Sith, his granddaughter. So let me pause there, because what they're saying here in this passage is that Palpatine did have one clone that survived, or was able to, that's basically lived, but it wasn't capable of sustaining his life force, and it wasn't force sensitive and anything. So what did they do? They kind of let it go. They let this person go on and live. And this is where I have a problem, because it's almost like they took a chance on, okay, well, we can't create a perfect body for Palpatine. So why don't we let this person leave? Let's pray and hope and trust in the Force that he's going to go out there, find somebody to mate with, and then on the off chance that he has an offspring, that offspring would be capable of sustaining Palpatine's life. It just seems like a huge
far-fetched.
Far-fetched, yeah. It's like a huge gamble. Like, the Sith are evil. Why wouldn't they just, this is where I'm going to start. I'm trying to pick apart this and I don't really want to, but why would they just not keep him there? And I'm sorry, but like, use him as a vessel to mate with other women or whatever and make babies. And if the babies don't live, then just kill them, right? I mean, I'm sorry. I know it sounds really morbid and horrible, but I mean, this is the Sith Empire and they're trying to save their one emperor. Why wouldn't they go that far? They've gone a million times worse. They've done millions of things that have been far worse than this. But rather than that, they allow this person to naturally go. I mean, maybe they were waiting for, maybe it was only they concluded that a natural birth was the only way that this would work. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. But anyways, they could still do that too in captivity. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I
mean, really, it comes down to this is a kind of for a family show. And that's kind of dark. So realistically, that's probably why. Yeah. But from a Sith perspective, it honestly makes no sense. Like, even if it weren't like a mating standpoint, but also like, why would you let it live? It was a failure. Destroy it. Yeah.
Yeah, true. I mean, yeah, right. I mean, I get, yeah, you're right. Why did they even let it go on? I'm sure did they have a off day where they just not feeling it? Like, we've killed, 2,000,002 people and I don't want that third one. Let's just let this one go kind of thing. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like a big gamble to kind of hope and pray that the offspring would happen. And that's not, again, this isn't a knock on Ray Carson because, again, she's dealing with material here. And I don't know if this is her way of trying to explain this or rationalize it, or if it was something that was given to her that said, here's kind of the outline, go ahead and make this work somehow. I don't know what all the intricacies are there, but it's just this kind of speaks to a lot of the problems that with Emperor Palpatine being a clone again that I'm not going to belabor here, but the other interesting thing here, and again, this is not to pick at it, but it says Palpatine is her grandfather, but her father is a clone of Palpatine. So wouldn't that make her his daughter rather than his granddaughter, since it's supposedly technically the same person?
I don't know. It's so.
Who answers these? Who knows about these things?
Who can I call?
Where's Pablo at, or Matt Martin? I need to get a hold of these guys. I'm sure this question's been asked before, but it's just confusing. Like I would. There's some of this I wish they wouldn't. They wish they would not have explained. Right? I would just leave it alone. Don't even touch it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know so this scene stood out. One, because the confirmation that Rey's father was a clone. And again, we only saw him in the movie, and they talked about him, being nobodies, and which they are, right? I mean, he was not force sensitive, and he went out and married somebody that was not force sensitive, and they had a daughter, and they loved that daughter, and they tried to protect her from the Emperor because they knew the Emperor was coming after her, which is all great. I mean, that's a good story, right? But we never envisioned that he would be a clone. And I've heard people say that he looked like Ian McDiarmid when he was younger. Do you see that?
I mean, no. He had much of a rounder face.
That's what I thought. He looked more like a young, like, Uncle Owen. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that more.
I don't know.
It was very similar.
Somebody else. But anyways, all right. Well, I'm not going to nitpick that. But yeah, it's, he's supposed to be a clone. So that stood out for me. And then the second part of it is, knowing that this body that he had went into was a true clone and it was broken and dying. And they do kind of explain like why there was other questions about, okay, so if he clones himself, then why wouldn't he just clone himself into a younger version of Palpatine? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing in the novelization that disputes that. But there's nothing that actually says that is exactly what they did. It does say that with these new clones that the bodies weren't able to sustain his life force. And so they were decaying and dying really fast. And so, I guess the takeaway from all of this is cloning is super difficult to do, right? It sounds like this is almost nearly impossible to do. Those on Camino are light years ahead of everybody else in terms of how this works, but it does explain that. And then again, the other thing was just Rey being a granddaughter versus a daughter. But we won't get into all that. So,
Open that can of worms.
Let's talk about a real quick fun one. Maybe the last one for the expanded scenes, but the Battle of Exegol. And so there's really only one scene here that I wanted to kind of highlight because that whole battle, first off, the pacing here is awesome. I really do like it. Mm-hmm. It's very short and that it should be, right? Because especially when you want, it's like the movies. And you've got multiple fronts that are happening. Yeah, usually with Star Wars is a formula. You get to the very end in the third act and you've got 3 or 4 fronts that are all kind of going in parallel and you cut between them. This is what George Lucas was trying to do in all the movies, cutting back and forth between all these, builds up all the excitement and all that. And the same thing here. I mean, I think we get that in The Rise of Skywalker, to be fair. But in the novelization, it's the same way. She's jumping around to all these different scenes that are happening. You've got the Battle of Exegol up atop. You've got the space battle going on. You've got Kylo Ren down below coming to the rescue. You've got Rey who's confronting Palpatine, right? And she's jumping back and forth. But this moment that I really liked was right when Poe gives his whole, my friends, I failed you. There's just too many of them thing. And it says, a familiar voice broke through the comms, but there were more of us, Poe. There were more of us, right? And we know that line from the movie. And then Poe says, look at this, Poe hollered. Look at this, as Lando laughed and laughed. The allies, this is Akbar's son, says, the allies, they're here. The whole galaxy's here, Poe explained. Lando, you did it, Finn yelled. You did it. The comms erupted as ship after ship began calling in. Thousands of resolved voices crying out, refusing to be silenced. Millennium Falcon standing by for orders, said Lando. Mon Calamari fleet standing by, came another voice. Phantom Squadron standing by. We know Phantom Squadron from the Aftermath novels. So that's cool. We didn't get to hear them. Ghost standing by, which, I mean, this is like, that's all they had to do, right? I'm super excited about that. We saw it in the movie, but we had somebody say it. Now, we don't know who it is. It doesn't say if it's male or female. It literally just says Ghost standing by. So maybe it's Hera. Maybe it's Jason. Maybe it's somebody else that's driving it's Ezra. Oh, who knows who that could be. Anodyne 2 standing by. Now, that ship, I don't remember. I know it's been mentioned before, but I don't recall where it's from. But Poe was not crying. It was not the crying type, but as everyone called in one after another, a liquid pooled in his eyes. They had done it. The spark of the resistance had become a fire. The next thing you hear, Alphabet 2 standing by. So there's Alphabet Squadron. That's cool. We just got that novel last year, which was awesome. And this one, I mean, get out of here. Zay Versio with Inferno Squad standing by. Look at all these ships. I mean, that's, I don't know. Did you play Battlefront 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to hear Iden's daughter and know that she's with Inferno Squad in this moment was really awesome.
It's so cool.
Yep. And then the next one. The next one, I'm sorry, I was just cracking up, but I was cracking up now. I was cracking up when I read it. Fireball here. Hi, everyone. And it's Kaz from Resistance. And then you hear somebody say, cut the chatter, Kaz, which you got to think was, what's his name? His mentor. Oh no, I'm drawing a blank on his name now. I should have put this in the notes, but the old guy, the veteran guy. Anyways, that somebody tells him cut the chatter, but it's just I can hear him saying Fireball here. Hi everyone. You know, it's Kaz being Kaz the way he would expect him to be. And then you hear okay, Poe interrupted because they had no time for 100,000 ships to call in. He says, just go shoot stuff, and that's it. I mean, that's really the scene. I mean, there's plenty more that happens, but we didn't get a lot of cameos in the movie like this, unless you were really looking for them and you had to look hard for them in some of the instances. So being able to have like a novel where they can actually do this and get away with it and not have to worry about people asking 1,000 questions of who's that. I mean, that already happened with the voices at the very end with the Jedi, but I just thought it was awesome that they got to do that. Were there any other scenes before we get into the new scenes? Because I know there's a lot. Again, I don't want to. There's plenty of other stuff, and like I said, we'll probably come back to this and do more on this later shows. But anything else that stood out for scenes for you?
You know, I think we hit on the big things.
Okay, let's talk about I only picked 2 scenes for the new scenes here that I want to talk about, and let's start with the Oracle. So this is in Chapter 2. It's right after Kylo has taken out the Mustafarians. I don't know if that's the right word or not. I just like saying that. But he just killed all the Mustafarians on Mustafar. And then he and his group of stormtroopers, they kind of start moving on in beyond the battle that we saw in the movie, eventually the stormtroopers fall back, and Kylo just kind of goes on about himself, and he's looking for something, obviously, right? And he comes up to this lake, and this lake is like surrounded by falling boulders, which turn out to be the remains of Vader's castle, which is awesome. And that's where it starts. Out of the middle of the lake, he starts seeing all these bubbles that kind of form up, and then it says a giant emerges. Now, we've talked about this with on one of the shows here recently. I think it was with Maggie. We were talking about this idea of the Oracle and what it looks like. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, I don't know, maybe we'll get Mike to put this in. Mike, if you're listening, well, I know you're listening because you're editing, but maybe we can get the Oracle as the show, the episode card for this episode. That'd be awesome. But imagine like this big, hulking, giant baby that has its eyes closed and like almost like slits in its eyes.
It's like a blob.
Yeah, like a blobbish face. And then like this spider-looking thing that's latched onto its head. That's a totally different being that's been latched onto its head. And that's what we have in the scene. That's what's coming out of the water. And so the passage reads, a giant emerged, a hairless creature sheening with wetness, bits of lake debris clinging to its pasty skin. Its eyes were squeezed shut, but it could still see after a fashion, because draped over its massive bald head and across one shoulder was a second creature with long, spidery tentacles. The two were locked in symbiosis. Kylo sensed that the giant's pain as though it were a slave to the spidery being that clung to it, yet neither could survive alone. And this being that comes out of it, he proclaims himself to be the Eye of Webbish Bog. That's the official name. I call it the Oracle because I think that's what was rumored a long time ago before The Rise of Skywalker even came out. We had these rumors of, quote, the Oracle, and a lot of people dismissed this. We're like, no way. There's no way what I'm reading here in terms of spoilers that this is going to be a Star Wars thing, because it doesn't look or sound like Star Wars, like anything that we've ever seen before. And yet here it is, right? It turned out to be true. It's in the novelization. And this is one of the scenes that I think they filmed if I'm not mistaken. They actually filmed the scene and was cut out.
Oh man, I got the DVD today. It released and showed up on my doorstep, and I'm really hoping there's like a deleted scene or something with it. I haven't seen it, but man, I don't think
so. I don't think they put any deleted scenes, man. Honestly. I know it stinks. Hopefully we'll get those in some way. I would hope they would do that at some point. But yeah, I want to see it too. I do. I've seen one still. It's literally a still, and well, I don't even know if it's truly a still, because it may just be a really beautifully rendered picture or painting, but it shows Kylo Ren. It shows like the burning trees. He's standing in front of the lake. His back is to you. He's really far away. It's a very long shot, and then you can see that Oracle coming over the Eye of Webbish Bog coming out of the water. And just
I think I know that picture, and in my mind, that creature is much larger. Than what that still shows.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So here's something else. So that thing comes out of the water, and Kylo tries to use the Force, and he tries to persuade the Oracle to give him the Wayfarer, the Wayfarer device. In fact, he tells him, "You will give it to me." And then it says, the Eye laughed. It says, "Do you really think my Lord would have left it in the guardianship of one who could be swayed by a trick of the Force?" So this thing is kind of like Jabba, right? That scene in Return of the Jedi where Luke tries to use the Force on Jabba, and he tells him your Jedi mind tricks aren't going to work. We know it didn't happen with Watto, but this is now maybe the third being, at least in canon and through the movies, that is kind of imperative. It's immune to Force persuasion. But it's interesting that he did try to persuade him that way. And then here's another one. Here's another line that stood out. It's very short. It's very quick. But again, I think this speaks to the breaking down of those walls that I was talking about around Ben Solo. The Oracle says, "Our fiery planet burns away deception. If you proceed down this path, you will encounter your true self." And again, I think that this moment here is an early indication of where Kylo Ren is starting to feel like, okay, what do you mean my true self, right? If I go down this path. And in some ways, it's almost like, well, it almost feels like he's trying to do it on his own, right? Like he's willing to go ahead and take the chance because he's trying to end this pain. He wants to go ahead and go down this path. And he's looking for any and every opportunity for somebody to kind of steer him in one direction or the other.
Yeah.
And even though the novel never really says it, but I mean, I call it the fall of Kylo Ren, or you can call it the rise of Ben Solo, however you want to look at it. But again, there's just more pieces. And Rey at the center of all this is really truly the catalyst, right? She's acting as the one constant and the catalyst in all of it. But it seems like this where we get this domino effect, where where the Oracle says that if you go, you're going to find your true self. And then we get later on, there's seeds of doubt. It all culminates with Leia force projecting, which we'll talk about here in a minute. She's kind of force projecting herself and giving that one last message to him before he dies. And that's really kind of the big awakening. I think it even literally says that she brings him to the light. Like that was her last effort, which I want to get into, not in this show, but that's definitely one of the things, spoiler alert, one of the things I want to talk about is that scene and what happens there. But so anyways, I'll turn it over to you in just two things. I picked the scene because, again, this creature is like nothing we've ever seen in Star Wars. It's odd. It's super grotesque. And I like the idea that neither, where it says neither could survive alone, because that to me, it mentions a symbiotic relationship. And that really goes back to like the Gungans and the people of Naboo that we saw in episode 1, and that symbolism between like humans and midichlorians, or maybe life and the Force itself, or I don't know, even to some extent, like the light side and the darkness, right? There's countless and countless examples of these symbiotic relationships that exist in canon and legends. And here was one example that they were using in The Rise of Skywalker. So, I mean, I think it's props to them to at least try to call back to that. And the second reason I thought it stood out was because of the whole, that line about, it reminds me of like the cave, right? Where, the parallels there between, this moment and then Luke and the cave in Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda tells Luke that, in the cave, he'll find whatever he takes with him. And for Kylo Ren, whatever he takes with him in his destiny is basically returning, as part of his destiny, is returning to Ben Solo.
Yeah.
So I don't know what, I know I covered a lot there, but what, any other thoughts on that one?
I mean, it would have been cool to see this. I really like the whole webbish bog thing. It's just great.
Why do you think the scene was removed?
Oh man, who knows? I mean, there's already so much packed into this film. I can see where just skipping over this part, right? It's just, you have in the film, you have Kylo Ren defeating the Mustafarians, right? And then going on and just finding the Wayfinder. Yeah. Now here, it would add an entire sequence, right? Entire new scene, as opposed to him just picking something up and looking at it. It would have added so much. I think it would have been too much for the movie. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, with what it had.
It probably would have slowed things down a lot considerably too, especially since we just got it. We were coming in hot and heavy with him slicing and dicing, and next thing you know, it just stops. And then it's going to pick up all over again. Yeah, I can see that.
I could see it if they ended up making The Rise of Skywalker 2 different films, like a part 1, part 2, definitely. But not if it was all in one film.
Yeah, I like that idea. Which I know people were talking about that at one point and didn't turn out to be true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the last one, and this is a big one for me. But this is Interrogation 6. This is in Chapter 9. And this scene is right after Chewbacca is captured, and he's taken to Kylo Ren's command ship. He's standing outside the doors of Interrogation 6, which is the room where Chewbacca is being held prisoner. And the first part reads, he had all the power now. So they're talking about Kylo Ren. He had all the power now, he reminded himself. The Wookiee was his past. He meant nothing to him. Kylo opened the door. Chewbacca was shackled to the wall. He looked up at Ren, fury in his eyes. So let me pause right there for a quick second, because this is a scene that we predicted way back in when one of the trailers released. And we were doing like the trailer dissection. We noticed that Chewbacca's bowcaster and his bandolier were on the table or something. This is in Kylo Ren's personal quarters. You can kind of see him laying there in the big white room. And we figured that at that time, Chewbacca was either dead, which we're like, okay, no, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do a Vector Prime on us. But we figured that Chewbacca was probably captured more than anything. And the reason why we predicted is we said, if he's captured, there's got to be a moment in here where they're confronting one another, where Chewbacca is confronting Kylo or Kylo's confronting Chewbacca, whatever. And we felt like that was going to be a really powerful moment. How they were going to pull it off, because you can't understand Chewbacca and you would have to read and everything. I mean, you could probably still do it. I don't think it would be as impactful. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But just the idea, because we know that Chewbacca and Kylo Ren were, kind of grew up together. At least they were around. He got to witness Ben Solo grow up as Ben Solo. And there had to have been moments when he was with Ben Solo. And we'll talk about those in a second because they do get into that. And just that conversation of what that would sound like, right? I mean, he killed his dad and he killed Chewbacca's best friend. He killed Chewbacca's best man. He, Kylo Ren shot Chewbacca, Chewbacca shot Kylo Ren and nearly killed him. And the idea that Kylo Ren would probably still be really upset with Chewbacca, because had he not done that, you could argue that he would not have lost to Rey, right? He would have tracked down Rey. He would have killed Finn. He probably would have turned Rey, or at least captured her and taken her to Snoke or taken her to Palpatine, whatever. But he wasn't 100% strength. He wasn't in his top form because of what had happened, because of the near mortal wound that he had sustained from Chewbacca's bowcaster right after he killed Han Solo. So there was a lot going into the scene, right? If they were going to put this in there. And so that's why we got so excited that we would see it, and it didn't happen. And just to get confirmation that it did exist and it did happen, I thought was just too good to pass up. I mean, I thought they did a great job with this. And so before I go any further, any thoughts around that?
Oh yeah. I mean, and there's this whole scene where Chewie is feeling fearful for Rey, and Kylo's like, he loves her, like he loves her like he loved Han, right? Mm-hmm. And Kylo does this thing, he's like, where he never really loved Ben that way. Snoke had showed him that much. And it's just, it goes back to when there's this scene when Lando is getting back on the Falcon for the first time after all these years, and he kind of sneaks into Chewie's room and he's poking around, and Chewie has this hologram of
Ben,
him with Ben.
Yep.
And so he's had this in his small quarters, right? He's lived for hundreds of years, and that's what he decides to keep with him, right? It's so sad to see how Kylo had seen that, or hadn't seen that, and had seen Chewie and had gotten jealous more of Rey than, thinking that Chewie didn't love him. And it was just a sad moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I'm glad you brought that up, because that scene right there too says a lot. Like you said about, Chewie holding on to those things, and what is, how does he, I mean, we know he shot him, right? But I mean, that was just Chewie being very,
out of grief.
Yeah. He was grieving, instinctive. It was just a kind of an impulse reaction to what had happened, right? He shot somebody, wasn't necessarily Kylo Ren. It wasn't Ben Solo. It was just somebody just killed his best friend in cold blood. And so he reacted. It was a very visceral reaction to shoot, and he did. And you come to think, okay, well, wow, he must not really like him, or they've got a bad relationship. But no, it's quite the opposite. He does care about him, which I'm going to come back to in a second here, because the next part says Kylo's voice crackled with rage, and I'm going to go past what you just mentioned, where he kind of feels maybe jealous of the fact that Chewie loves Rey and not necessarily him, or he feels like he's being betrayed. He felt betrayed by Chewie in that way, or in that regard. But Kylo's voice crackled with rage. What was her mission? Where is she going? Give me the answers, or I'll take it myself. So he says, you understand that. Chewie's not force sensitive that we know of, but my guess is, Chewie's kind of trying to taunt him, right? Because he doesn't even try to budge. He doesn't do anything about it. He allows Kylo Ren to kind of dive into his head and kind of get what he wants, right? And that says, it should have been satisfying to watch Chewbacca wince in fear. Kylo should have felt pleasure in reaching out with the Force, inserting himself into the Wookiee's mind, ripping away his memories and thoughts. Instead, it was exhausting. He saw flashes of the Wookiee laughing with a much younger Han Solo than he himself remembered. He felt Chewbacca's joy when his best friend married the woman he'd come to love as a sister, saw the Wookiee cuddling a human toddler, teaching an older boy to fly a speeder, target practice with a young man, their blaster set on stun against a haphazard dummy made of rocks. Uncle Chewie, he called him back then. Nausea rolled around in the pit of Kylo's stomach when he finally walked away from Interrogation 6. He had gotten what he needed. surely the sense of triumph would follow soon. So, I mean,
I just got chills with you reading that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So like he calls him Uncle Chewie, and that's another example. I think this is another example where this was a big realization, right? That last line of surely the sense of triumph would follow soon. And in the fact that he had a visceral reaction, like he felt sick to his stomach. He knew he was doing something wrong, and he knew this wasn't right.
Not this man who's killed thousands of people, right?
Right. Yeah, he's of all things, this is the one thing that really upset him to that point. I mean, that made him physically feel something. And you can't feel that way unless you have, the light side in, or you're a good person in some way, somewhere down there buried. You don't feel this, right? You may still go through with an act like this, because you feel like you have to go through with it, but make no mistake, that feeling comes from like being morally conscious and having basic human feelings, which I don't think, when we think about the monster that Kylo Ren is described as, you wouldn't expect him to kind of have these types of feelings if that were truly the case. And so he went and he does this, right? He does this. This is now the third time he's done something like this in the movies. Each one has been different. But this one has definitely been the most emotionally powerful for him. And I love the images here, right? So you see Han and Chewie together as best friends, which would have put Kylo, in this movie, Kylo and Han are probably around the same age, and if that's truly what happened. I mean, it could be during Solo that we get. I mean, the images, I think, is the first image that comes to mind is when Han and Chewie are on the ship after they just Val recruited them and they made their way onto the ship and all that. I think about that moment where they're sitting there talking about like, what's your name? That kind of thing. They're laughing. But I mean, who knows? There's plenty of other moments where they were just kind of being best friends. And so, Kylo being able to see that, I think that immediately, I think he relates to that because of the age difference, right? Between him and his father in that moment. I think that probably sends a message or resonates really strongly with him, that they're laughing and they're having fun. And then we see, he feels the joy that Chewie had the day that Han and Leia were married, and that Leia felt like a sister to Chewbacca, right? And so that not only is, he's seeing Chewie's perspective, but that resonates with Kylo Ren or with Ben Solo because that's his mom. And now he understands that is the relationship that Chewie and Leia had, where they were like brother and sister. And then, of course, you get, real Chewie cuddling with Ben Solo as a toddler, later teaching him how to fly a speeder. Who taught him how to fly a speeder? Chewbacca. Then Chewie showing him how to fire a weapon, or, how to get good with practicing or shooting, all that stuff. So, I mean, for me, this means like Chewie or Uncle Chewie, he was there for Ben when Ben needed someone the most. It wasn't Leia. It wasn't Han. I mean, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but you get the sense that Uncle Chewie is the one that raised Ben because Ben's parents weren't around and they couldn't. And I think that hurts more than knowing that Ben was alone and without anyone, right? I don't think that was the case at all. I think this is saying that of all the people, the very quiet, silent one was the one that was actually there for him the most. I don't know. It's very powerful. And it's a lot of what we were hoping we would get with a confrontation between Kylo Ren and Chewbacca. They went about it a different way. I think she went about it a different way. I know I've seen the Rise of Skywalker, the art of Rise of Skywalker. I've seen this picture already, although the book's not out yet. It's been delayed. I think it comes out in April 6th or something next week. There is an image of this in there where it shows, Chewbacca shackled and literally kind of hanging, almost like he'd been put on a cross, and Kylo Ren kind of up in front of him and extracting all this information and all that. So this scene definitely was probably storyboarded at some point. It was supposed to be in there, but he got pulled out, of course. But I mean, a really powerful moment. And this is one that I really struggle with. Like, on one hand, I would have sacrificed other moments in the movie for this, because how powerful it is.
I have to agree. Yeah.
There's a number of scenes I could just say you can take 2 of them. Go ahead and take 3 of these scenes. Just give me this scene. Cut it down to whatever minutes or expand it to whatever minutes. But this one felt like we could or should have had it. But at least we get it in the novel.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any other thoughts around? I know I kind of talked a lot about it, but
I mean, it was just so, like, out of the whole, the film, I got pretty emotional, right? I've seen it quite a few times. But during this, in the book, when I read this, I got a little emotional because it was like, it's just one of those things where you get this relationship between these two people, and they've been away from each other for so long, and Kylo doesn't think that he loves him, and Chewie's obviously just struck with pain, right? Just emotional pain. Seeing that this little Ben, right, that he loved so much, grow up and become what he is. It was powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you got to think that Chewbacca sees him as his son as well. Maybe not his biological son, but I mean, if they share these moments together, and we can see the pain on Leia's face. We see it throughout all three movies, right? We see the pain on Han Solo's face, and we get a great moment with Han and Ben Solo here in The Rise of Skywalker, and you kind of see the inverse of that. You kind of see just the joy and the happiness in Han's face, which was really nice to see. We don't really get that with Chewie, and I think this passage is powerful in a lot of different ways, but it does explain to us. It gives us more insight into what Chewbacca's probably feeling. I think we can deduce like what he would be feeling here and why. Because again, I feel like he was there for him. He was a constant. He was a parental figure, and I would expect that relationship was mutual. I think Chewbacca felt like that was his son that he was raising, in a lot of different ways. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's pain all around here. We just don't necessarily get to see it because Chewbacca's as stoic as he is. I mean, he has that one moment where he breaks down after Leia dies, and beyond that, we get I'm trying to think one other moment where he's really sad and upset, but there's not too many of them. So, but anyways, all right. Okay. Just quickly, there were a couple of quick Zori moments. I know you wanted to mention that were in here that we didn't get, which I thought these were great moments. I'm sure we have the same ones here, but the Zori moments were awesome because I think that's a character that was underutilized. We never even got to see her face, which I think is a complete disaster that they didn't do that. Because I think she's just an amazing actress, number one.
Yeah.
But anyways, what were the ones that you had for Zori?
Well, I really liked that you got to see the whole like Spice Runners side of things going on during this whole generation. Obviously, you got it more during, you got that like not bounty hunter, but like Han Solo, right? For Solo, like that kind of nitty gritty. And then you get this, which is really cool. You get to meet all those characters, watch some of them die, unfortunately. Yeah. And again, it's just her outlook on things was really cool. I liked seeing that from her.
Yeah, she's much more dynamically written than she is in the movie. I mean,
oh, for sure.
You pick up on it. Like if you're really looking at it from the movie perspective, you get it, especially when she's like one moment ready to kill everybody, and then she's like working with them, and then she's very trusting, and then she's very helpful, and then she pulls a Han Solo at the very end and shows up to kind of help and save the day, kind of thing. So I mean, there's a lot of complexities, and there's probably some definite parallels there between her and Han Solo. I would expect too, in terms of just how complex they are, but. It is a character I felt like was underutilized, and at least we get some more information here, and her and like Babu Frik, and we get to see them. We understand how they get off the planet and all that. So there's a lot more in the novelization. Where this is one where I felt like, man, I don't know. I'm torn. Like this is another one where like, do I give up something else in the movie for more of Zori? I don't know. That's a tough decision. I could go either way. I wouldn't have mind if they would have put more of these moments in there, expand them just a little bit longer. But I think in that moment, by that point, the movie had slowed down enough that they really needed to pick it up. And I guess that's why these these little moments and scenes were clipped and cut. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out too if they were ever if this was stuff that was just expanded upon, or if it was stuff that was added all brand new.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get more of her too. I mean, I'd like to see her in more stuff.
For sure, I would love it too.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say they planted seeds here, but there's definitely things that they can go back to, whether they're flashbacks or whether they go forward. I think they've done enough in the novel with her character that allow us to kind of have little jumping off points to do other things. All right, well, maybe we'll come back and expand upon those too. I know we're kind of just talking high level here without a lot of specifics, but we're getting really low on time here. Let's kind of wrap it up. I want to get your final thoughts. And what I thought we'd do is just kind of talk about like, okay, so who's this book for, right? Who should be reading this book? Because then, you know, if you're a fan of The Rise of Skywalker, would you recommend this book to somebody?
Oh, for sure. It adds so much. You really need to read it if you like the movie. Because really, it is the movie. It's everything from first page to last page. It's what you see on the film.
Yeah.
My husband, actually, I was reading it once, and he was like kind of flipping through the pages while I was reading it. He's like, you got to look at the last page. You got to read the last line of the book, right? And he reads it. He's like, wait, that's literally how the movie ended. I'm like, yes, this is the movie. This book is the movie. So if you liked the movie, for sure, pick it up. It's a great read. It adds so much to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably looking for like an epilogue or something, right? Where which we don't really get. But what about what if you were a hater of The Rise of Skywalker? Like, if you hated this movie, is this book going to do anything for you? Or are you going to pick this book up and read it and be completely churned?
No, I don't think so. But what I had just said, this is the movie.
Yeah, no, it's. I think I knew the answer to that, but I threw it out there anyways. You know, yeah, I would agree. If you hated the movie, you're probably not going to like the book, and I guess, and a lot of it goes back to what we said early on when we first started the show. It fixes some things. I would say more. I'm going to use the word heal. How about that? Okay, it heals some things. I don't know if it fixes anything. But yeah, if you've got some really major hangups with the movie and some of the plot elements and the narrative and some of that stuff, this ain't going to do it for you, man. Sorry. Just, pass on by, which you probably already done. You're probably not even listening to this podcast, because why the heck would you want to know whether or not this or anything, know anything more about The Rise of Skywalker? What about if you were kind of on the fence? I put the meh of The Rise of Skywalker, but if you were just kind of in between, on the fence, take it or leave it. Is this book, would you recommend this book for somebody to pick up?
I would say take the chance. There's some really meaty subject matter in here that you don't get to see otherwise. So I say do it.
Yeah, I would agree. If you're on the fence about the movie, one way or the other, didn't love it, didn't care, didn't hate it, but it was okay. And you're into novelizations and you want a quick read and you want to feel like maybe a little bit fuller, have a fuller experience. I think this would push you into I like The Rise of Skywalker boat, rather than just kind of middle of the road. I think there's enough here for that. It doesn't steal anything away from the movie itself. It only just adds to it. So, I would definitely recommend it if you were just kind of in the middle of the road, or certainly on the fence about whether or not you liked it. And the last one I had, and we've kind of already answered this, but for the Raylos out there, because I love my Raylos, but for the Raylos, is this something worth picking up?
Please read it. There's some really cute things in here that that took me off guard reading it, because it was really just like Kylo Ren thinks Rey's face is lovely, and that's just cute.
Yeah, I would say this one's tough to answer. I would say read it as well if you haven't read it. I think it's worth it. I know a lot of the Raylo community they've already extrapolated all of the relevant articles or relevant passages and shared them and talked about them and decomposed them and, theorized on them and provided opinions one way or the other. So there's probably no reason to pick up the full novel, especially if you're one of the Raylos that felt like, we're really there just for the relationship of Kylo Ren and Ben Solo and Rey, which is legit. That's totally cool if that's your thing. But you're probably better off just focusing on those moments that you just spoke of, Michaela, in a shorter, condensed version, rather than go and try to read all the other stuff, because I think it's the other stuff that really grates at the nerves. And it's just, you're going to read more of the same there. Where if you focus on the one parts, the good takeaway stuff, the good stuff, right, if you want, I'm using air quotes here, but if you focus on the good stuff from a Raylo perspective, like him at least still being alive and being able to speak with her, I think you're probably going to be okay.
Context is always important too.
Absolutely.
So.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, we'll come back in future shows, maybe next week. I don't know. We'll see. And talk about some additional passages and clips, or I call them clips, but I don't know, some paragraphs, maybe a couple chapters here and there. There's plenty more in here. I mean, the book is just chock full of little things here and there that are enough that I felt like we can really expand upon that and actually turn that into a show and just talking about it. So I'm kind of excited to do that. So look for more from the Rise of Skywalker novelization here fairly soon. All right, before we go, let's do a couple quick shout outs. We've got 2 new members to our Discord server, and that's Maggie and Nicole. They just both joined here in the last 2 weeks. So if you've not been listening to our show here recently, we have a new show on Earglue Media called Petticoats and Poppies. It is a look back on Victorian era period films from 2 people that have history backgrounds. We've got Maggie, who is an actress, and we've got Nicole, who is a film critic. So very, very insightful perspectives in terms of, coming from their backgrounds and how they're looking and approaching these different movies. Their first movie they did was Emma, and they just did a Jane Eyre, the BBC version of Jane Eyre that came out a couple years ago. Or was it the 90s version?
Yeah, they're doing such a great job too. I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. But they finally, they're on there. So, and much like all the rest of our podcasters, they're on there as well on Discord. So please come out and join us in Discord. And thank you, Maggie and Nicole, for joining. They've got their own channel as well. So if you want to talk to them exclusively, ask questions, and you're not already doing so on Twitter and all that, you can do so on Discord. Let's see, network-wise. So last week we didn't have a Cantina Cast show. However, if you are a Patreon member, you did get a show called Cantina Radio. So I did. I do this once a month. I do a show called Cantina Radio. It is where I play music that's Star Wars inspired music from all kinds of genres. This last show was called Rapcast Part 2. So last month I did a show that was all rap music that was made with Star Wars references, or they were people rapping about Star Wars in some way. And there's so much of it that I mentioned that there was probably going to be another show. Well, yeah, that's what I did. I did another show this just recently here, and it's part 2. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's literally just me being a quote DJ, playing different music, talking about the artist, talking about how the music was inspired, if I know that. I even throw in some commercial breaks. And so you get some Star Wars commercials that come along with that as well. Some kind of oldies but goodies. It's a lot of fun. And I have a lot of fun doing it. So again, if you're a Patreon member, we gave all the Patreon tiers. It's normally a $2 tier one, but we gave that to anybody that was paying $1 or more. So that was kind of our way of saying thank you, especially in these hard times. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. Over on the Film Appraisers, Josh, Joe, and Todd are doing a show called Suburban Friendship and Home, where they talk about the classic film E.T. So, Michaela, did you ever see E.T.?
Oh, of course.
Did it scare the crap out of you?
No, I loved it. I grew up watching some pretty sketchy movies, though. So.
Okay. All right, we'll talk about it after the show, after we end the show here.
There we go.
But so they did E.T. and they had a very special, amazing guest on that show to do that one, and that was me. I was on the show with them, and no, I'm kidding. But I was on the show, and you get to hear all 3 of us, because Todd didn't make it as usual, but Todd didn't make it. But the 3 of us talk about E.T., we talk about our favorite moments and why it was so inspiring, and it's a great thing to talk about, especially, again, with everything going on right now. Why not go listen to them and hear us talk about that movie? It was a lot of fun, so please listen to that. And then what else we got? 3 Quarters to Play, which is Mike's show. He's been doing that. It's an arcade shows. He's talking about his coin-op arcades that he has at home, the one-ups that he has. And he's got a live stream that he's been doing now too. So we're going to put the link in the show notes, but to his YouTube channel where he's doing the 3 Quarters to Play on there as well. So take a look at that if you can. He has a really good time doing that, and it's a lot of fun. And then he also is starting to do, I think it's called, he's calling it Earglue Media YouTube channel. And so that's kind of a lot of different things right now, but I know we've had some people on already, and he's done some streams, some live streams. So if you want to follow that, we'll put some more information in the show notes for you there as well. Okay. And finally, before we go, if you want to get a hold of us, you can find us on all over the place. We're on Instagram at the Cantina Cast, Twitter at the Cantina Cast, Facebook /the Cantina Cast. You can send us an email to cantinacastfanmail@gmail.com. If you'd like to call or text us, you can do so at 803-717-CAST. I don't know the numeric values for that, so I'm going to say it again, 803-717-CAST. We're on iTunes, Discord, Patreon, every single place you can download a podcast. So please follow us, subscribe to our show. We would much greatly appreciate it. All right. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back next week. I think we're going to do some more Rise of Skywalker novelization moments and expand upon some of the stuff that we didn't get a chance to in this episode. But before we go, Michaela, any final words for our listeners?
I know you said that we'll be dissecting the book, but I think we're actually going to be dissecting the Tiger King. So...
Okay, now we're changing it.
We'll see who wins.
We're 0 hour change of plans. Next week, it's going to all be Tiger King. So hopefully you'll join us on the special edition of Cantina Cast Tiger King edition. So, all right. Anyways, with that, we will see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.